9:52 p.m. A gas station on the edge of a town you picked because no one in your old life had ever mentioned it. 2 pumps over, a sedan idles with its lights off, engine running. You have watched it for 6 minutes. It hasn't moved. Your phone sits face down on the passenger seat, the last device still tying you to a name that doesn't match your ID anymore. Somewhere behind that windshield, someone might be running your plate. Or it might be nothing. A man waiting on a call, a woman finishing a cigarette. You don't start your engine. You don't check the mirror twice. You just sit there, doing the math on which piece of your old life finally caught up with you. 10 months ago, 4 people still connected you to your old life. Your mother, your sister, your best friend, and your partner.
None of them knows where you are. None of them plans to betray you. But the Marshals only need to figure out which one you'll eventually come back to.
Level 1. The file opens. A federal warrant doesn't launch a chase movie. It launches paperwork. Your case is assigned to a fugitive task force, one of dozens the U.S. Marshals have led nationwide since the modern task force system expanded in 2000, staffed by federal deputies alongside state and local officers who can work together across jurisdictions that would normally divide an investigation. Nobody stands in a war room studying your photo. There's a rotation of deputies working you between 4 other names, a case file that barely moves for weeks. Your last known address goes stale within days. Your car disappears.
Your cards stop pinging. Somewhere in that building, a deputy adds your name to a whiteboard already crowded with 24 others. Files ranked by priority, last known address, and how recently anyone's checked in on them. Yours goes near the bottom. Other cases are newer, more dangerous, or simply more urgent. Some fugitives land on decades-old most wanted lists, with rewards and press releases attached. A single case turned into a national priority. You're not one of those. You're something more common, and in a strange way, more dangerous to underestimate.
An ordinary file, worked steadily by people who don't need headlines to keep going. No press release will ever use your name. That patience isn't going anywhere. A file like yours doesn't come with an expiration date. So they stop looking for you and start looking for a way in.
Level 2. The network takes shape. Every fugitive leaves a shape behind, the outline of everyone who ever knew them. Investigators start with what already exists: old case files, booking records, employment history, a stack of names pulled from your life before you ever became a warrant. Then they go knocking. Doors that have nothing to do with crime. Your mother's, your sister's, a former landlord's. Have you heard from them? Do you know where they'd go? Would you tell us if you did? Most people answer honestly. They're not hiding anything. They're just worried. A single visit rarely breaks a case open. It adds a name to the map, a number to a list, a reason to keep looking. Your sister answers the door in her work clothes, arms crossed, giving short answers until the deputy leaves a card on the counter and drives off. She doesn't call you that night. She doesn't need to. She genuinely doesn't know where you are, and it shows. The old landlord barely remembers your name until he's shown a photo. Then it comes back fast, quiet, never any trouble. Another line in a file that's slowly starting to matter. The Marshals' cold casework often returns to the same places years later. Old evidence, financial records, computer records, family members, friends. Anyone whose connection to a fugitive may have survived long after the original trail went cold. Relationships don't expire. They're the one part of a disappearance that time doesn't easily erase. By the second month, your file has a shape. 4 names circled harder than the rest, while everything else on the board goes quiet.
Level 3. 3 fall away. A sibling who moved twice and stopped answering unknown numbers. A best friend whose social media went quiet the week you disappeared. A little too disciplined to be nothing. A partner with a new lease 600 miles from where you were last seen. And a mother who still calls the same number every Sunday at 11, even though it hasn't rung back in months. Investigators can't watch 4 lives at once. Surveillance costs time, people, and attention, and a dozen other warrants are competing for the same hours. So they start crossing names off. The sibling goes first. A second interview turns up real confusion, not caution. The
The friend stays on the list a little longer, until a records check shows the quiet account belongs to someone who simply changed jobs. Nothing to do with you. The partner is the hardest to drop. A new city and a new number read like someone starting over on purpose. For 3 days, that lease looks like exactly what it isn't.
Someone quietly preparing to disappear alongside you. It takes a full week of checking to confirm the move happened months before you ever ran. 3 names come off the board. 1 relationship is still standing.
Level 4. The one who remains. That leaves the plainest relationship of the 4. The one built on years, not urgency. In your file, that's your mother. Nothing about her looks like a lead. She hasn't changed a routine, hired a lawyer, or missed a single Sunday call that never gets answered. She still sets the table for 2 out of habit some nights, then puts the second plate away. That consistency is exactly what makes her worth watching. Years of behavior are harder to dismiss than one suspicious phone call. This is the turn the whole case pivots on. The Marshals stop treating you as a point on a map. They start studying the person they believe you'll eventually come back to. You think about calling her sometimes, late, when the quiet gets loud enough. You never do. Not because you don't trust her, but because you do, completely. And that's exactly what makes the silence necessary.
You don't know any of this. As far as you know, the search is still built around your friend's old apartment 2 states over, or a rumor that you crossed into another jurisdiction entirely. You feel almost safe. That feeling is the whole point.
Level 5. The watched routine. The exact routine changes from case to case, but the principle is simple. Investigators look for the ordinary pattern that suddenly changes. 200 miles from wherever you're sleeping, an unmarked car sits half a block from your mother's house, logging nothing more dramatic than a woman leaving for work at 7:40 and coming home at 5:15. For weeks, that's the entire story. A woman living an unremarkable life, doing unremarkable things, because she has done nothing wrong. She still butters toast for 2 some mornings out of muscle memory, then eats both slices standing at the counter. She leaves the porch light on until 10:15 most nights. These details mean nothing on their own. What matters is whether one day looks different from all the others. 2 states away, the attention on your friend quietly fades. A few follow-up calls, then nothing. No one ever tells your friend how seriously investigators once considered the possibility that you might return to them. Most relationships lead nowhere, and most people involved never learn how close their ordinary lives came to becoming part of an arrest. You call it a coincidence when your sister mentions offhand that a car she didn't recognize was parked outside their mom's place twice last month. You've been telling yourself things are nothing for 10 months, and so far it's been true every time. What you don't see is a pattern forming from grocery runs, appointments, familiar roads, and the same diner visited again and again. They're not looking for a crime in any of it. They're waiting for the day the pattern bends toward you. So they wait. And so, without knowing it, do you.
Level 6. One clue isn't enough. Task forces hear tips, rumors, mistaken identifications, dozens of leads that look promising for a few hours before collapsing. 9 days in, a gas station camera 3 counties over catches someone who seems to match your build, your hair, even the slight limp noted in your file. For 48 hours, the case leans in that direction. A bulletin goes out. 2 deputies reroute. Then the lead dies. Records place the person somewhere else. The resemblance was real. The identification wasn't. That's the problem with hunting someone who doesn't want to be found. One clue can pull an entire investigation in the wrong direction. What turns suspicion into something useful is corroboration. Another independent fact pointing toward the same place, the same vehicle, the same person.
Move too early on a guess, and you risk burning the only relationship that has produced anything meaningful in 10 months. So the file on your mother sits and grows, one unremarkable Tuesday at a time. They need one more fact, something small enough that nobody would think to hide it.
Level 7. The ordinary thing. It isn't a dramatic confession or a mysterious anonymous tip that finally changes the case. It's a pie, Every year, on the same date, your mother orders 2 coffees and 2 slices of pie at the same diner. One is for her. The other sits across the table, untouched. Maybe the waitress remembers seeing it before. Maybe an old receipt confirms the same order. Maybe it's simply one detail that means nothing until somebody notices the date. It's your birthday.
The second slice doesn't prove you're coming home. It doesn't prove a meeting happened. Your mother hasn't secretly told investigators where you are because she doesn't know. It's simply a mother keeping a place at the table for someone she still hopes will walk back into her life. But after weeks of watching routines that never change, that small detail creates a question worth testing. They don't move on the diner. They move on the date. Deputies quietly shift attention toward the roads around her house and wait to see whether this year, after 10 months of silence, the pattern finally bends.
Level 8. The net closes. Cases like this rarely end on a movie chase. They end when separate pieces finally agree. A vehicle that doesn't belong to the neighborhood. A sighting that matches the description. A visit to an address already connected to the investigation. A person appearing where investigators have spent weeks waiting for them to appear. Each detail alone can be dismissed. Together, they become difficult to ignore. It isn't unusual for fugitive cases to end on something almost embarrassingly ordinary. In documented cases, years of searching have ended during traffic stops, fingerprint checks, routine encounters, or small inconsistencies that finally connect one identity to another. 20 years of hiding can collapse in minutes once the right details meet in the same place. For you, it's a driveway. Task force vehicles take quiet positions near the street before your mother is even finished pouring coffee.
When a car arrives that afternoon, nobody kicks in a door. Nobody charges across the lawn. They wait. A few minutes later, you step outside, into a yard you haven't stood in for 10 months. A deputy says your name. Not the one on the ID in your pocket. Your real one. And suddenly, the entire disappearance becomes very small. Your mother learns 2 things within the same hour. That investigators had been watching the people around you, and that you were closer than she ever let herself believe. She never gave you up. She never knew where you were. She simply kept leaving a place open for you, and eventually, you returned to it. That night, out of habit, she turns the porch light off at 10:15 anyway, though there's no one left it was ever really waiting for. Back at the gas station, the sedan with its lights off was never anything, just a stranger waiting on a call that had nothing to do with you. The car that mattered was never the one you were watching. It was outside the one place you eventually convinced yourself you could visit safely. You spent 10 months disappearing from strangers.
In the end, you weren't found by a stranger at all. You were found through the one person you could never fully leave behind, and by investigators who understood who you'd come back to long before they knew where you were.